Hello craftspeople, and welcome to my third and final guide to my Teyvat Sports Day series, Long Jump. After we've covered sprinting and high jump, I kinda also wanted to build a long jump, and I'm gonna quickly demonstrate how that works in my stage. Basically, you have to start before the line, and as soon as you land, you will leave a little pile with your distance that you traveled. And as usual, in the end, we have a Billboard leaderboard, which I published in the Miliastra Resource Center. So if you also want to have something like that, just download it. It is done for classic mode, but with minor adjustments, you can just as well use that for beyond mode. And now I want to show you how you can build that yourself. As usual, I start with the environment that I used. I just use the terrain editor to make a sandy spot here. That is quite long. Unfortunately, I do think that some characters might still be able to break this. I think Chaska can just go wherever. But I think for my weaker wanderer, all of these far-traveling characters should be enough to land here. As usual, I have a wonderful toy block here and some stone walls as the limiters. If you want to see them in action, check out my other guides where I also did the other tracks. And I have one very simple measuring line to the side. If you want to do distances in Miliastra Wonderland, then we all have to assume that one empty model, right? If you go to dynamic units, other empty model, display empty models, then this will be 1 cubic meter. So basically I have after 5, 10, I have a marking each, and you can always assume that one of an empty model with zoom 1 is usually 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter. So these measure lines I also put myself to have some kind of visual indicator. But now to the objects that we need for this. The long jump is one of the simpler disciplines that I made. It consists basically of a start and a landing area that works somewhat analog to the other disciplines that I built, if you have watched those videos. But basically, the third thing we need for this is our marker that will be left behind when you land in the landing area. So let's start at the first thing you interact with, which is this here thing, the jump start. This is, as usual, a trigger area. It's not a collision trigger. It could be. Actually, it would be cleaner to have a collision trigger here than on-hit detection, because you don't really need the hit point here. You can have a look. Basically, the on-hit area is just as big as the start field itself. Also in scene, you can see that this is our collision area. What does happen as soon as somebody steps in there? Very simple logic for a jump start. Basically, if it's a player, basically we just assume it's a character, and we set is jumping to true. So very much according to every other discipline that we built. The second one that is important here is our landing, which is this here thing. It also very much needs a collision detection, but this needs on-hit detection. Very important, because you need to have the on-hit location. The on-hit area here was kind of tricky to make out, because first off, you don't want to hit the collision box when you're jumping off, but it also has to be high enough for tall male characters, at least if you're building in classic mode. I had an issue that Aurora and Vaka, every tall male model, could not score on long jump just because the collider was slightly not high enough. And remembered when I said in another video that you have to have your collision trigger source at 2 meters here. Yeah, that was the main reason why it was for long jump. If you haven't watched the high jump video, then I will mention the player setup in a second. But yeah, that was kind of the interesting thing about the on-hit detection here on our jump landing. And now let's have a look at the bones of this, the jump landing. So I would say it's kind of medium complexity here, but in the end, it's also very simple. We are just checking whether our landed entity was actually jumping. So went through the start line, and then we set that to false to invalidate any further scores, because otherwise the repeating collision trigger would just fire all the time. It's just for us to that we don't leave markers every step. So if the player was jumping, then on the on-hit location of this on-hit, we are only taking the X and Z components of the vector, because we don't care about the height. We want this to be 0. So our marker prefab is on the floor. Then we are putting our prefab ID from our marker in here. This one, put that in here. And we set the custom variable of the player to distance that we need for display, for example. We do set the nameplate on our marker here, because the player, if you use my get character names Miliastra asset, you will have a custom string on your player which holds the the active character name. And this is what I'm filling into our marker prefab here, because we want to display the name of the character. You could, if you're working in Beyond mode, of course, you could just put in a player name here instead of a character name. Makes sense. But since I built all of these for classic mode, I would have to do that extra step. You don't really need to do that. You could just get the player nickname here and put that in. And that leaves us with our final entity, which is our marker. It is basically just a cavity model with a nameplate that displays our character and distance, both of which are stored in custom variables on the entity itself with distance and character name, which can be any string. In my case, it is the classic character name, but in Beyond mode, it could also be a player nickname. This doesn't have any node graph attached. It is a very simple object that we just drop in our jump landing. It is a very simple entity that we just create in our jump landing and set the custom variables right after. And then we are finally submitting our long jump with the distance that we measured. Analogously to all the other disciplines I built, this will be in our stage entity then. So in our stage entity, we have our long jump scores, and in our player, we have custom variables, distance and is jumping, as well as potential collision trigger source on your character. Depending on whether you used on it and you don't really need it, it will use the hurt box. And if you want to display this distance in the UI, then you can just add all of these stage variables as text boxes in a UI element here. So this consists of several text boxes, right, and some images for the gold, silver and bronze medals. And we're just filling in our variables from the stage here. High jump scores 1, 2 and 3, and pick those here and fill in the variables to fill your scope or leaderboard. And that is basically how you create a long jump game mode in Miliastra Classic and Beyond mode. I really hope that it was insightful for some of you or entertain you a little bit. What easy things you can actually come up with in Miliastra Wonderland. If you enjoyed that video, do the algorithm things and download the Miliastra assets. If they save you some time, I'm very, very happy. Be over the moon if you also tried out my stage, and just leave your high scores and your experience with that map in the comments. Until then, happy building!